For film fans, the last year of the 20th century really had everything. A career-launching suspense film from M. Night Shyamalan, an indie smash that created the found-footage horror genre, some of the most iconic teen dramas ever made, Julia Roberts fully Julia Robertsing, and the return of a sci-fi franchise that would keep running ever since. There's so much to choose from, and now, nearly 25 years later, the great pop culture debate wants to determine, what is the best film of 1999? I'm the Marsha fucking Brady of the Upper East Side, and sometimes I want to kill myself. I'm your host, Eric Resniak. Please help me welcome the rest of the panel for this episode, none of whom have cruel intentions. Or do they? She burned, she pined, and she perished to get on this episode. It's Ama Marfo.
Of course I did. So let's get it going.
And that's just one of the things I love about you, Ama. Next, please welcome back to the podcast, Kate Reculia.
Eric, I thought the first rule of the great pop culture debate was that you don't talk about the great pop culture debate.
It's also the second rule, but also, I need to confess, I've been secretly attending support groups of people traumatized by the hot takes from this podcast, just to make me feel alive. And finally, please welcome back Kevin Dillon. Kevin, that sure is a lot of pills you have there. What exactly is wrong that you need all this stuff?
Motherfucker, you fucking asshole. Who do you think you are? I come in here, you don't know me, what my life is, and have the balls, the indecency to ask me a question about my life?
Listen, lady.
Don't you call me lady. I have sickness all around me. What is wrong with me? You suck my dick.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Kevin Dillon giving the iconic Julianne Moore monologue from Magnolia. He would not actually call me a motherfucker, at least not to my face.
Great pop culture debate
I went to your
theater.
face.
Exactly, that's true.
I'm actually going to replace Nicole Kidman in the AMC ad.
We come here for experiences. So, before we get to the debates, how does this work? We made a poll of every major American motion picture released in theaters between January 1st and December 31st, 1999. Our listeners picked their favorites, we tallied the votes, ranked the picks by popularity, and added them to a bracket. Now we argue about it and insult each other, all for your amusement. Want to play along at home? You can. Head to greatpopculturedebate.com and go to the polls and brackets section. There you'll find the downloadable listener brackets for this and every episode of our little show. Do our picks match up with ours? Do you think we should stick to our nether regions into a hot apple pie? Let us know by dropping a comment on this episode at our website or by yelling at us on Twitter, Instagram, or Mastodon. If you're curious about how we went from the top 32 down to the Sweet 16, become a Patreon supporter of our podcast. Our Patreon supporters at the $5 level or higher get exclusive access to the warm-up/part ones for each episode, in which we work our way through all of round one. It's like a whole bonus episode for each topic, and it includes arguments you will not hear anywhere else. And that's just one of our great Patreon perks. With that out of the way, let's silence our flip phones and move on to these debates. First, the panel unanimously wants to take the blue pill, or was it the red pill, and stick with ultimate number one seed, The Matrix, them deconstructing 4-seed Iron Giant. But Kevin wanted to briefly say farewell to this animated cult classic. Kevin, take it away.
Yeah, I just want to hopefully join our Patreon, listen to round one. We waxed poetic around Iron Giant, but it's a great leap forward in animation. It represents quite a bit of the time, and it's Brad Bird really launching the trajectory of his career and the trajectory of the Iron Giant in pop culture, and we were excited to have it go this far.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. We will be advancing The Matrix next. The majority of the panel is beguiled by 3-seed The Talented Mr. Ripley, but Kevin is blinded by rage for the injustice to his pick, 2-seed Eyes Wide Shut. Case, convince us that we should appreciate Ripley's talents. Kevin, remove your mask and bare your soul in defending Eyes Wide Shut. I'm going to have Kevin go first. And just so our listeners know, this is a particular film that Kevin is very, very passionate about. So this is about to get yelly. Kevin,
I'm actually going to be good on this one. I'm going to be calm. I'll name this up front. This is the film I have going all the way. And if it doesn't, that's also okay. I think I'll name that. I know that it is not everyone's cup of tea, and I understand why it isn't. But in my opinion, and I'll start by saying that, IndieWire did a list of the best films of the 90s just within this last year, and Eyes Wide Shut was their pick as the best film of the 90s. And I think I'll start by saying that and name that this is Stanley Kubrick's magnum opus. He was not alive to see this film released. He did see a cut of this film. There are named to be several cuts of this film. This is a 3-hour film that probably ultimately would have been and could have been a 4-hour film. And I think for me, why I think this is the best film of 1999 and represents this is because it fills that void of the chaotic conclusion of the 90s. You have this doctor and his wife who live in New York City, who are traversing inner circles of the wealthy, while they themselves, in our minds, would probably be considered wealthy, are not exactly probably in the same elite group as the folks they're socializing with. They just kind of support and serve them in their role. And so that represents the different folks. But I think what fascinates me about this film and why I do think it's almost like an Alice in Wonderland of the 90s. It's Tom Cruise going down this rabbit hole of, did all of this really happen? What does this represent in and of its time? And it's Tom Cruise normal, which is great to see in some capacity. And you've got he and Nicole Kidman on screen for what I believe is the third time together in this film, third and last. Might be the second, because they did Days of Thunder and
Far and Away.
Far and Away. So it's the third film that they did together. And what becomes so rapturous about this film is, I would say it's one of the last truly erotic films. And I think the 80s and 90s were very much grounded in that erotic thriller. And this is one of, maybe if not the last, erotic thrillers of its kind. And Stanley Kubrick grounds this film it's based on a book, and takes this book and really makes it his own. And you get to veer in and out of these different journeys that Tom Cruise goes on at this, as he's at this masquerade ball, or at this ball, and then ends up kind of going on a journey with regards to a wild ride, a wild night. It's not only Alice in Wonderland, but Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And I think I know, it's just like one of these like mixed metaphors for what happens and what exists. And you get all these different scenes and sequences, and then you get the infamous Tom Cruise gets invited to, or crashes, a sex party. And what I actually very much like about the sex party, which a lot of people don't talk about, is there's a lot of different folks having sex with one another within this space. Like, it's women having sex with women, men having sex with men, these masked experiences. And that masked party is one of the most talked about, replicated pieces of pop culture. And even if you've never seen it, folks know that sequence. It's kind of very much, and when we talk about Fight Club, has those elements of like, it's a very talked about sequence and experience. And so I think the other piece that really resonates with me around this is it's almost this end of 90s New York representation. It feels like a fairy tale land that couldn't exist, shouldn't exist, and a almost pre-Rudy Giuliani New York City, while yet also being a very present Rudy Giuliani New York City. Mm-hmm. It's delving into the excavation and removal of sex in New York City, where they're having to escape to the suburbs to navigate their political sex experience, their sexual experiences or sexcapades. It delves into drugs and death. And I just think it's just one of those films that psychologically explores what it means to be married to someone in the 90s and to navigate their worldview of the 90s. And I think the other thing, I love that there's a cameo of one of my favorite 3 for 3 directors, Todd Field, playing the piano player in it. And he is such a good actor in it. And he learned how to be a filmmaker from Tom Cruise. He learned how to work with from Stanley Kubrick, and he learned how to work with actors from Tom Cruise. And this film resonates to a very turn of the century element. This film was probably 5 to 6 years in the making. maybe even longer. And Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were basically pulled off of projects because of this film. And what this film does and represents is like that true art house last remnant of the 90s and how we created this. And let me tell you, The Talented Mr. Ripley is one of my absolute favorite films. And so this is a very difficult decision for me, but emblematically why I would move Eyes Wide Shut forward is because it very much represents 99 as opposed to The Talented Mr. Ripley, which for unfortunate reasons, I could put in any year. I do think it's Anthony Minghella's best film. I think it is beautiful. I think everything about it is perfect, but Eyes Wide Shut is it is the 90s. It represents everything about sex and drugs and just wandering around a city in this like very like explicit way. It's just a perfect film. I love it.
All right. So Kate, talk to me about Talented Mr. Ripley.
So, and the other thing, I mean, I'm very swayable on this because Eyes Wide Shut is one of those sort of like it was so talked about. It was Kidman, it was Cruise, it was Kubrick. It just had those three names on the poster. You didn't need to know any of their first names, right? And it is representative of New York in the 90s. I really liked what you said about that. And also of something dying, right? And the way we talked a little bit in the Patreon warm-up about Magnolia, which we'll talk about later, as having a very kind of apocalyptic feeling to it. Eyes Wide Shut has a very apocalyptic, dreamy, surreal, like just a society diseased kind of and falling apart feeling. Talented Mr. Ripley. So my rubric for what I chose or what I was kind of thinking about when I made my decisions was, do I like this film? Did I see it in the theater in 1999? What is sort of its long tail? What is its cultural impact? And how 1999 is it in its bones? Talented Mr. Ripley, also based on a book, Patricia Highsmith's The Talented Mr. Ripley, which is about her sort of amoral, sociopathic protagonist who like murders his way around, wealthy people. Also, like Eyes Wide Shut, about people who are not as wealthy pretending and sort of like being in an echelon of people who are much wealthier than them. Excuse me. Where's my notes? I feel like at the time it got some buzz, but it didn't get kind of the reputation that it has now immediately. I think people kind of didn't totally know what to make of it. It is absolutely beautiful. It's shot in Italy. It is a tidy, nasty little thriller where I explicitly remember seeing this as like I was 19 in the theater, and like the queer subtext is text in this movie, right? In a way where it's in the book, right? But like where a movie might have like even 10 years earlier, 20 years earlier might have been a little more winking or a little more elided that queer subtext, unless it was, because this was like a major studio release, right? Unless it was like a more art house or auteur sort of movie. And it also is the first time that Matty Damon really gets to play against type. He uses his all-American, schoolboy veneer to be like this murderous pretender who just wants to be in this world with Dickie Greenleaf. You have, oh my God, Gwyneth Paltrow just like doing the most, just doing the most in this movie. It is 99-ish in that it has Gwyneth Paltrow and Matt Damon kind of like acting sort of for the first time, really breaking away from his partnership with Ben Affleck. And I know you have thoughts and feelings about Ben Affleck, Amma, which I'm curious what your thoughts are. Maddie here. I don't know why I'm calling him Maddie. And you also have, oh my God, Brain. Who is Dickie Greenleaf?
Jude Law.
Thank you, Jude Law. Gorgeous human as the rich playboy that Tom Ripley basically wants to be. You have Philip Seymour Hoffman, incredible role. You have Cate Blanchett coming in at the 11th hour, being like a socialite who thinks that she's so good. And like all of these names, right? It's sort of like young Hollywood that will, for whatever Hollywood stars exist in the early 21st century, it's them. in a microcosm, right? So it is 99-ish in that, and that it represents who's kind of who the up and comers are coming together to make a beautiful movie. I could be convinced to go for Eyes Wide Shut, but that is the talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, you can't see my finger. Sorry, Kevin. I was pointing to you.
The only other thing I'll add about Eyes Wide Shut is it really does have one of the most perfect endings, and it's basically like as the chaos unfolds, what do we need to do? And she doesn't say it that, like, essentially what Nicole Kidman has said. We only have one thing we can do now. Fuck. And like through all the chaos, which you don't know whether or not she set all of this up or not. You have no idea what or how anything unfolded in this night. But I think what and why this film that was filmed over all this time and was set to release, ideally earlier, 1995, 1996, ends up being released in 1999. And the last word is fuck. And like Eric, in the Patreon, you talked a little bit about, the chaos agency of 99. And I think ultimately why Eyes Wide Shut represents 1999 is it really represents the peak chaos of one night in a person's life that is just kind of careening to something that is unknown. And I think that's why Eyes Wide Shut really does represent the end of the decade, because it's basically like tumult and what will happen and what could happen and how do we navigate that? Well, we fuck. But either way, like, it's one of those fascinating last lines. It's one of the best lines, and it really does emblematically, I think, represent the end of the 90s. We're just so lost. And we're so just trying to find our way in this world. And I think sometimes it's hard to connect with Tom Cruise on an emotional level, but this is one of those times where you genuinely can. And you are actively like, I am this human and I'm trying to also find my way through this world. And I'm trying to survive and live my life, but I'm also trying to navigate the chaos that exists around me.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of things to say, but first, Amma, I want to know where you are on this one.
So what I'm realizing as we have this conversation, and some of this goes back to the Patreon warm-up, is the idea of 1999 defining a movie by what it's about, or the idea of 1999 defining a movie by maybe who was in it. Mm-hmm. And for me, again, another thing that came up in the Patreon warm-up is where this is not always the case. I'm the youngest panelist, so what was happening in my world in some cases is very different from what was happening to Kevin or Kate or to Eric. I was 13. So I didn't see Eyes Wide Shut until, for the first time, 2006. So I was a very different person by the time I saw it and was like living in very different circumstances, like pre 9/11 New York versus post 9/11 New York, just at the beginning of that. Mm-hmm. But in 1999, I very much cared what Matt Damon was doing. I very much cared what Jude Law was doing. I really cared what Gwyneth Paltrow was doing. And then, like, you get, like Kate said, Cate Blanchett, Philip Seymour Hoffman, one of the first times I became familiar with him. And amazing. Even somebody like Philip Baker Hall, who I knew from, like, other stuff. Like, that cast made it for me in the sense of, like, if you make that movie at any other time, does it hit in that way with those individuals? I don't know that it does. So for me, just kind of like, it's not quite recency bias, but more to like the opposite, if anything, like the bias of what was happening for me in that moment as opposed to how I feel about it now. There's just something so special about the moment where the talented Mr. Ripley hit that edges it out for me.
And not baby, but Jack Davenport briefly at the end.
Yeah.
Tragically.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So the reason I have two reasons for voting for Ripley here initially. One of them being, which film do I like more? Easily Ripley. I think it's very rewatchable. I think it is beautiful, as Kate pointed out. There's a lot of things that I love about it. And frankly, I think Ame just nailed one of my main things, which is that cast was like about to shoot to superstardom. They were already stars.
But they were like all together. Yep.
Correct. And then kaboom, like they're everywhere, right? They were owning Hollywood essentially for the next decade. that's one of the reasons I initially had voted for it. The other reason I had initially voted for it was I do not like Eyes Wide Shut as a film. I do not enjoy to watch it. I watched it when it came out, and I think I was ambivalent towards it at that point. But
Did
then
we
I
see
rewatched.
it? Did we see it together?
I don't know. And this is the thing, Kate. I
think we did.
rewatched it for this, and I remembered virtually none of it. The only section I remembered was the orgy.
Mhm.
And as I was watching it again in 2023, I was like, it's funny because Kevin referred to it as an erotic thriller. It is the least thrilling erotic thriller I can imagine. In Trinity Taylor, where are the thrills? But Kevin makes excellent points, like uniformly, and was swaying me with his arguments. And I think it is a testament to you, Kevin, and the strength of your arguments that I'm even considering swaying my vote, given how much I dislike this film personally. I think it is boring. I think it is pretentious. I wish I liked this film as much as people love to tell me how much they like this film. And I do think it's a little bit like on American Idol, where every contestant would walk up and they would say, "Who's your favorite singer?" And they would say, "Donny Hathaway." And I'm like, excuse me,
who is that?
Oh, like literally 80% of and exactly, right? But I'm just
Donny Hathaway. I don't know who that is.
I mean, he's actually a very amazing.
He's very good, and it's not a knock on his talent. I don't imagine, Eric, but my God, there's no way that's true of all of those people.
Exactly. It's like he's incredibly talented, but he's one of those artists that generally people didn't know, and you only said you knew him if you were trying to show off. It's like
funny.
interns when I was in newspapers, when the first thing I would say, "What do you read?" "Oh, I read the New Yorker." "Oh, fuck you. You do not." Like, it's you trying to virtue signaling is a very like loaded term now, but it's like the less loaded version of that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's putting on airs.
It's taste signaling.
It's taste signaling.
Yeah.
And I think all of the navel gazing and the rhapsodizing of this film, it's a bit much, right? And I understand it's Kubrick.
I mean, you know why it is.
Because it's Kubrick. It's his last film.
It's his last film.
It's like built up into this like almost legendary thing before it was even released, right? So there was the hype around this thing was unbelievable. And I'm sitting here, don't believe the hype, because as an actual film, I'm just like, are we there yet? Like, where are we? And I loved your description of this film, Kevin, more than I loved the film. I would have rather listened to your 10-minute discussion of this film than watch the 3 hours of it again. I swear to God.
It is a Christmas film for me, by the way.
It is.
I watch it
a
Christmas
Christmas film
almost every year.
Do you then stick your head in the oven? I mean, it is just.
Do you need another Christmas movie? If so, can I recommend Hustlers?
No,
because Hustlers is a Christmas movie.
That is also a Christmas watch for me. What I'll say to you is, I think for me, I like a slow burn, and that's literally what this is. I like to sit. It's the same reason why Tar is my favorite movie from this year. I like to just sit in someone's world and follow them around, and stuff can happen. It's Todd Fields again. Yeah. And so like stuff can happen and stuff cannot happen. And I just like to linger in the space. And I get not liking this movie. I do. And I'm not mad at either of these that go forward, because to be upfront and honest with you, I love both of these movies and they're both great.
So here's my thing. I'm inclined to switch my vote to Eyes Wide Shut because I think the argument that Talented Mr. Ripley could exist at any time is accurate. And I do agree with the fact. Well, I think it's true. Like it happened at any time in the 90s. The one thing that's different is that particular cast, which had incredible magic.
Yep.
But I don't like this movie, but I understand the argument as an important piece of film. Like, let's even ignore the apocalyptic argument, right? Which I think, and I'm the one who started that last round, but I think if you're talking about film in 1999, what are like the top 5 you're going to talk about? Eyes Wide Shut will come up, regardless if I think it is wildly overpraised. It is an important relic from that year in the film industry. So, are you sticking with Ripley?
Yes, and I have a question for Kevin.
Do it.
So, and this goes back a little bit. So in the girl group episode, we had a conversation about TLC versus whoever they were up in that particular part of the bracket. And I asked, is part of how we color or consider TLC grounded in the fact that we can't get more of it? Which is not to dismiss any of their talent by any means, because they are tremendously talented, and however far they got in the bracket, they absolutely deserve to be there. But is that colored by the fact that we won't get more? And I kind of wonder with Eyes Wide Shut, like, would we feel as passionately about as we do about it if it weren't the last one? How do you feel about that? Because I don't know the answer to it.
I don't either. Because I don't know that Kubrick was going to ever get the opportunity to make another film, unfortunately. It's the same thing I think about David Lynch right now. Inland Empire has this same experience with people, because I don't think we'll ever get another David Lynch film, a full-length feature film. I do think, around the quote-unquote greats, that can be the case where there is a heightened praise to it. I've always liked this film, though. Like, to be honest, I from the first moment I saw it, I was a film geek from my young days, and I always loved this. And I saw this before I saw 2001. To be honest with you,
So did I.
Yeah, so I will say I don't know, but it's possible.
Okay. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I am genuinely curious about that. Is part of the buzz of it, how long it took for us to get it, and then it also very quickly became and that's it. Is that why?
Sure.
It's
I don't know.
Great question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. Kate, are you sticking with Ripley?
I am sticking with Ripley.
I can't believe I'm doing this, but I do think I'm switching my vote to Eyes Wide Shut with the stipulation I don't like this movie, and I don't think it should be going. It will advance much farther. But I think Kevin made solid arguments, and I can't deny them. So I think it's a more important film to 1999 than Talented Mr. Ripley. So that's my argument. It is a tie, and Eyes Wide Shut is a 2 seed, and Ripley is a 3 seed. So Eyes Wide Shut would advance
There we
to the
go.
Elite Eight. I can't believe this is happening, but here we are. Next, in an Alan Rickman versus Alan Rickman matchup, the majority of the panel preferred the meta sci-fi hijinks of 4C Galaxy Quest, but Amma is martyring herself for Kevin Smith's religious satire, 1-seed Dogma. By Grapthar's hammer, I will do my best to push forward Galaxy Quest. Amma, explain why it's the end of the world for Dogma, but you feel fine. I'm going to have Amma go first.
I really, really like Galaxy Quest. I want to be abundantly clear about that. I love Galaxy Quest. In fact, just to tell you all a little bit about me, for those who may not follow on social media, I have had what I can only describe as an explosive reaction to Pedro Pascal. And I realized that a big part of the reason for it is he is a not necessarily conventional celebrity crush who also likes to dance. And the last time I had an unconventional celebrity crush who also liked to dance, I didn't have social media. That was Sam Rockwell, who is wonderful in Galaxy Quest.
So wonderful.
So just please know when you see me on there, A, I know it's deranged, and B, it is actually the energy of at least 2 crushes coming out at once. Just so we're clear. Now, that being said, the idea of going for Dogma. This is, again, the moment when it hit.
Sure.
I love Dogma. I thought, as a family, we were not super religious. My parents grew up religious, and then we really didn't have much of anything. So it was we didn't go to church, weren't forced to do much of it. So this was a way that I got to engage with that topic in a way that made sense to me. And it was celebrities that I really enjoyed that were doing really fun comedy with it. So again, to Kate's point about me and Ben Affleck was there, Matt Damon was there, Kevin Smith was there, Jason Mewes was there, Chris Rock was there. It hit Salma Hayek. It just hit at the moment where something that I hadn't engaged with very much came about and started me on a conversation of some bigger questions that weren't going to come up any other way. And that was really special in its own right. So while I do love Galaxy Quest, again, it kind of just goes back to there's something about the moment when I encountered it that it's edged out. It's a sentimental argument, but that's what I've got.
I love the sentimental arguments, and that's why we do this, right? Everybody has their own kind of approach to things. My question for you is, have you watched Dogma recently?
relatively recently, like not within like the last year, but maybe within like the last 2 years or so.
Okay. So I watched Chasing Amy for our best queer film episode, which we're doing in a week or so.
Mhm.
And then I immediately followed up with Dogma for this one. And I was astonished at how much, and I think it's important to understand, I loved Kevin Smith at this point in the 90s. I was obsessed. I read everything that he did. I watched everything that he did. I read the comics he was doing. Like, I was all in on the Askew-verse, including the Jay and Silent Bob cartoon. And then I rewatched Dogma now, and I was like, oh, it does not hold up well. It does not hold up well
I
at
think
all.
parts of it do, and parts
Okay.
of it are tougher.
Yes. And I'll give you that. I'm not saying that it's a disaster because it's not.
No.
I do think Linda Fiorentino's acting is something that was very much a product of its time.
Oh boy,
Early
was it?
90s.
It was very 90s. And I think the end with Alanis Morissette is absolutely delightful. Just absolutely delightful.
Oh, and Jason Lee. Oh my gosh.
Jason
And-
Lee is,
And
And-
Salma Hayek talking about Home Alone.
yes.
And how she was not
Yep.
responsible for Home Alone being one of the highest grossing films of all time, which is still one of the funniest moments of all time.
It's so good.
So it has its charms, absolutely, but as a whole, I was shocked at how poorly it holds up, especially because the earlier film, Chasing Amy, actually holds up quite well. I was actually more impressed with Chasing Amy than I expected to be. But that's neither here nor there. I'm here to talk about Galaxy Quest, and it is one of the movies that I did not see coming. I'm absolutely delighted that it is a 4 seat here,
Yeah.
because it was not exactly a huge hit at the time. It was a moderate success, but hardly a blockbuster. I did see it in the theater, and I was immediately charmed by it.
Drink.
Exactly, because Kate saw it with me. So, for those who are not aware, Galaxy Quest is a comedy about the washed-up cast of an 80s sci-fi TV series that is very obviously based on Star Trek: The Next Generation, that now scrape by doing the fan convention circuit. And it's important to understand now that in the 90s, fan cons are not the showbiz meccas that they are today.
No kidding.
Seriously, they were very much largely derided as bastions of loserdom, and that's where our cast is approached by a bunch of actual aliens who believe them to be the space heroes that they played on TV and kidnap them to help save their planet. So, plot-wise, not crazy inventive. I think we've seen things like that before. But the writing,
super high concept. Also in the
super
way
high
that
concept.
Dogma is super high concept.
Yes, correct. I actually think it's perfect that these two films are up against each other,
Yep.
if I'm being honest. The writing and the cast of Galaxy Quest elevate this to something I think pretty special. I'll specifically single out Sigourney Weaver, who is like, when is the last time, actually, as I say this, I know the answer. When is the last time you had a bad Sigourney Weaver performance? Answer, Marvel's Defenders. But she's terrific in this movie. She's so much fun. Alan Rickman, who is so lovable in a Spock type character. Tony Shalhoub has some memorable moments. As Amma mentioned, Sam Rockwell in one of his first major acting gigs. And Tim Allen is there. It's
Also, Enrico Colantoni.
Yes.
Enrico Colantoni, that's right, as one of the aliens. It's wacky. It's quite funny in parts, and it also has some tear-jerking scenes. There's parts of that movie that get you, but I think it's really fun. Is it a better film than I think it's a better quality film than Dogma in 2023. Was it a more important film in 1999 than Dogma? No. But fun fact about Dogma, you cannot it's very hard to, you can rent it now, but
The
you can't
rights
find
are
it
all weird.
streaming.
Yeah.
The rights are very weird because of the Harvey Weinstein of it all. Kate, where are you on this one?
I am on Galaxy Quest. I remember going to see Dogma in the theater, drank, and just sort of being like, "This is great! Like, go off, Kevin Smith, with your high concept, like dealing with your Catholic roots." But like Galaxy Quest is, again, didn't see it coming. It's just such a special, low key, great movie where like every time they had to make a decision, they made the right one, and it is so loving and generous and just funny. It's a great movie, and it also like. It's just so smart about the source material, about fan culture, and like what an actual asshole Captain Kirk is. Like, it's just really, really good.
Absolutely. Kevin, where are you?
Simply put, I actually think Galaxy Quest is the funniest film on the bracket. So
Really?
I do. I really do. I think it's the funniest film on the bracket. And so I'm going with Galaxy Quest.
By Grabthar's Hammer.
I will say this for Dogma. One of the things that I criticize Kevin Smith for in general with his career is he keeps going back to the easy path and keeps going back to the same bucket over and over again. And Dogma was a big swing.
It was.
Big swing.
It
Big
very much
swing.
was.
And I respect the hell out of him because it was very controversial at the time.
Mhm.
So I really respect the hell out of him going for it. I just think it needed a few more polishes on the script, number one. And I think he was a little bit self-indulgent in
It
parts.
needed an editor. It needed an
editor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wish Janine Garofalo had been Linda Fiorentino.
Oh my God, that would
Yes.
completely change that film.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, Amma, this is a place that you sometimes find yourself on this here podcast. I believe it is 3-1. Are you accepting that Galaxy Quest continues here?
Very. I don't think there's a bad choice in this in this matchup. So I
Right.
I completely accept that. I've felt worse coming out of a 3-on-1. This is actually this is the most pleasant it's ever been, to be honest with you.
Perfect. That's what I get told at least once every 4 years. So I'm so glad to hear that. All right. So next, it's another 3/4 split as most of the panel is crawling into a tiny door hidden behind some filing cabinets and into 2-seed being John Malkovich. But I want to save 6-seed Magnolia. Kate, Malkovich, I will explain why we need to respect the cock and also Magnolia. I'm going to have Kate go first and talk about Malkovich.
Oh, this is really interesting. I didn't foresee these two coming up against each other.
And spoiler, that's because Magnolia was supposed to last round, and we actually successfully flipped the script. But go ahead, Kate.
What was this supposed to be up
It was
against?
supposed to be Toy Story 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then definitely Malkovich. So did I see this in the theater and do I like this movie? Yes, and resounding yes. It is the first Spike Jonze directed major feature film, which was pretty earth-shattering kind of at the time to see a lot of people. Do I see a ton of people talk about it today in the same way that they talk about like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or even adaptation? I don't think so, but like none of that exists without this movie. It was so weird. It was so successful. Big names were in it: John Cusack, Catherine Keener, Cameron Diaz with that wig, and proving that there was an audience for this kind of imaginative, surreal, emotional, earnest audacity, right? Like, and I didn't even mention John Malkovich, which, like, if you don't know, Being John Malkovich is a surreal movie about a puppeteer who takes I forget how he gets the job, but he takes a job at an office building where all the floors are 3/4 high, so he has to crouch. And he finds a door in his office building. Catherine Keener's his boss, that when he opens it, he goes flying into a wormhole, and he is inside John Malkovich, and he sees the world through John Malkovich's eyes until eventually he is ejected to like the side of the Jersey Turnpike. And it's just like this, now there is a tolerance and there's an interest for this kind of surreal inventiveness that again is a kind of like sincere and audacious, like in various other movies. But like before this movie, it wasn't in this scale. It wasn't in this kind of like indie darling, we can make money with this. So it's very 99. Can we talk about the hair and the clothes? Like
hair and the clothes, baby.
The hair and the clothes of this movie, and just the sense, I mean, again, with that apocalyptic sense, but this sense that like we don't totally know what reality is, and we don't totally know what our lives are going to be, or if you could have another life. And could it be John Malkovich's, or could it be some other vessel that you end up being trapped inside? The end of this movie is one of the most haunting things you will ever experience.
Yeah, I love that these two movies are up against each other, actually. I think they are perfectly matched in their audacity, their weirdness, and again, I agree with you.
And like, sincerity. They're both very sincere.
Incredibly sincere. Yeah, and that I actually think is a badge of honor for both of them, because they take on some pretty, at least Magnolia takes on some very heavy shit. And does not try to dispel it or make it more palatable to you with humor. I mean, there are some funny parts in Magnolia. There absolutely are. But so we weren't expecting this to advance, so I don't have a prepared argument, but I think I can just freestyle on this because I love this movie. movie. And what I mentioned in the first round was the first time I see it, I loved it. And I thought it was, and I realized subsequently, because I was trying to be pretentious and show off about how cultured and intelligent I am, I watched it again like 10 years later. I was like, nope, that was a try hard move. And it's overwritten. It's fraught. It's team too much. But then I watched it again, getting ready for this episode, and I was like, no, you were wrong 10 years ago. This movie's amazing. It is Paul Thomas Anderson doing a real exploration into the ways, I think Kevin summed it up last round, where it's the way parents fuck up their kids and then adults try to grapple with where they are in their lives because of those wounds and where they're going. And it's about destiny. It's about making peace with what has happened. It's about trying to move forward in a world that is falling apart. And that was a big part of why we moved it forward. Was 1999 had this real, it's the millennium.
End times vibes.
End times. You did not know what was going to happen. Is there going to be some biblical reckoning? And literally the end of Magnolia is a biblical reckoning. Like literally that basically was God telling people, get your shit together. That's essentially what Magnolia is. It is beautifully filmed. It is an ensemble cast that is peerless. William H. Macy is just incredible in his role. I don't even know who the character actor is who plays opposite of him in the bar scenes.
Hold, please. I'll look it up.
Please do. Those two. Go ahead.
What is he in? He's in a sitcom.
It's like evil Dick Van Dyke, but he's so good in their banter. You have John C. Reilly, and I think really one of his first big leading performances. You have Tom Cruise in one of his best acting performances. That interview sequence with him and the interviewer, who is sitting there and knows exactly what his shtick is and just picks him apart and dismantles his whole act, is superb. It is so, like, that's riveting to me, frankly. That's a thriller. That sequence is a thriller to me more than Eyes Wide Shut is. Who am I forgetting from this ensemble cast? Julianne Moore, incredible.
Jason Robards.
Jason Robards. The regret. What's his
You've got
face?
Melinda Dillon.
Melora Walters.
Who's incredible, and you never see her anymore. It's like everybody's so good, and it really is like the way, and it's these people are all actually linked in a very weird way, and you discover it as the movie goes on, but it's just terrific cinema. It's gripping. It is 3 hours long, but I never for a moment lost my attention, and it was impactful. I found myself deeply moved at multiple moments in this movie, and it's overwritten in parts for sure, but I think it's very, very real. So with that being said, let's put it up to some votes. I'm sorry I went on too long. I didn't have notes. Amma, where are you on this one?
I'm giving it to Malkovich. I like what it gave us. Like, I think about the idea that something like that was possible and all of the things that were then also kind of allowed. So even Charlie Kaufman stuff like Eternal Sunshine, like Adaptation, but even something like Severance. Like, you don't get Severance without John Malkovich, and so many things in between. Yeah. I gotta give it to being John Malkovich.
Thank you for the Charlie Kaufman shout out. I was going to correct that it written by Charlie Kaufman, who then Michel Gondry directed Eternal Sunshine, which I
yes.
Yep.
Kevin, where are you?
Well, I'll start by saying the gay who was talking to William H. Macy, I recognized him from an episode of Murder, She Wrote, where he played a guy who was obsessed with a woman who was supposed to play Jessica Fletcher in a movie, and they are going to attack her at the Psycho House. Anyways, tangent.
That's a great episode.
It's a great episode.
It's a great episode.
But it's tough because these are two, like, this is where you like get into like the very difficult pieces, where both of these are excellent films and excellent representations of 1999. I'm going to go with Malkovich because I think the other thing that stands out to me in Malkovich is like the way you get to live in this idea of like gender fluidity and understanding what that looks like. And it is a film that really is at the forefront of kind of letting this exist at that time. And you have Spike Jonze, who was this music video director of the 90s, bringing his style and flair to the big screen, which is very much 99. And
Totally.
we'll talk about
that next.
David Fincher.
David Fincher next.
Yep.
But you get that quite a bit. And I think for me, anyone who can direct Cameron Diaz to like an Oscar worthy, like, and when I say a nuanced Oscar worthy performance where she's not laughing and playing goofiness. Fun fact, the Anna Faris part in Lost in Translation is based on Cameron Diaz because Sofia Coppola was married to Spike Jonze and disliked her quite vehemently and thought she was an idiot. And that's why that role's in Lost in Translation. Fun fact. But anyways, being John Malkovich.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it. I will say one last thing for Magnolia as you push out the pastor. I never mentioned Amy Mann. And
yes,
it is, I think, one of the most quintessential parts of that film is the way that music is intertwining, not just Amy Mann, but also the Supertramp songs.
Yep.
And also the Dreams Can Come True song that's playing every time
That's
William H. Macy is in the car. So good. But anyway, I would just say thank you. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about it in the mini episode. It is a important movie, but I don't disagree. John Malkovich should advance. Next, we are evenly split between two different approaches to Y2K male nihilism. 1-seed Fight Club and 4-seed Election. Kevin, fill us up with your fervor for Election. I will fully disassociate into my much hotter, more evil version and throw some bows for Fight Club. I'll go first. I actually have notes on this one, so I promise I won't ramble. Confession, I did not see Fight Club until I had to do research for this episode. In my defense, swear to God.
Wow.
In my defense, I was very poor in 1999 and very, very busy in November 1999 when this came out, working one 20-hour-a-week job, one 16-hour-a-week job, and taking 18 credits so I could graduate early from Syracuse University. So I wasn't seeing a lot of movies in the theater.
Kevin.
But I really enjoyed it. It is a disturbing and grim, and it's filled with rage, but it's also engaging. The performances are all uniformly excellent. I don't know if Ed Norton has ever been better in a role.
He has not. He has not.
It could easily have been a whole lot of nothing. Like imagine an Aaron Taylor Johnson in this role. Nothing. Line, baby.
Don't put that in my brain. Come on.
I'm serious. Like, but you can see what I'm saying. Like he brings so much to a role that is a cipher, right? Which is the point. Brad Pitt has effortless, grimy swagger and an almost animalistic element to his movements. Helena Bonham Carter is oddly endearing in, let's be honest, a thankless role. Like it's a thankless role.
It's a thankless role.
But she's great in it. And the direction by Fincher is not only excellent, but exceedingly 1999. This movie feels like 1999. I knew the Tyler Durden twist going in, so I'm sure I didn't have quite the impact that it had on the average unspoiled moviegoer at the time. But regardless, I think it tapped into something that I'm not sure we even fully knew what was going on at that point, even though it was all around us. White male rage at being, quote, robbed of the American dream that they had been promised since birth. An entire generation of young men who somewhere in their lizard brains were realizing that the world they always assumed would just be given to them was evaporating all around them. The target in Fight Club is capitalism and consumerism, but there are obvious elements of the alleged assault on masculinity that is still happening with the right harping about it today. It was all there on screen almost 25 years ago. That's remarkable. The also remarkable thing is at the end, they win. that's like, I'm just like, well, I don't know if I love that, but you know, that being said,
there's a great Pixies song though.
Yes. So that being said,
great Pixies song.
I will turn it over to you, Kevin, to talk about Election.
Alexander Payne, written and adapted by a Tom Perrotta novel, starring Reese Witherspoon, Matthew Broderick, oh God, where do I start around my love of Election, which may ultimately end up being the film I try and push all the way to the end at this stage. Election represents the misanthropy and misogyny that fully resonates and emanates from understanding a simple high school election. The film is grounded in a three-way high school election. Tracy Flick is the quote unquote, go-getter, quote unquote, unlikable young woman who tries hard and works hard and wants to be the best and quote unquote, do the best for her school, while sometimes having her own problems and misalignments around that. She also slept with her teacher because she's essentially propagated and seduced by him with her own like youthful naivete around understanding what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a leader in the world, and what he leads her to do. So essentially this film is around the male perspective around women trying to assert themselves and assert their dominance, all while underpinning this hilarity of a high school situation. And then you've got, oh God, I forget his name. He's so boring as an individual.
Chris Klein, that's it.
Chris Klein, yes.
He
Chris
looks
Klein.
like a Jason.
I love that you're just like, he's boring. And I was like, Chris Klein.
Yeah, Chris Klein. And so essentially what then ends up happening is she runs against Chris Klein, who was a star football player who breaks his leg. And the only thing he can do to kind of pass the time is run for this. This girl has essentially scoped her whole life to be school president at her high school, and this jock breaks his leg and is like, well, I guess I'll run for class president, nothing else to do, and essentially cultivates the idea that straight white men can just decide at the last minute to run for election and basically win the day. And I'll say this, and I understand that we are benchmarking this as a 1999 film. This film clearly represents a connection between Hillary Clinton and the idea of what it means to be a woman in politics, which was oddly non-existent in 1999. There weren't a lot of women who held high levels of office. There were not a lot of women who were governors at this time, if any, maybe in 1999. And what this film does is set the stage for the next 20 years of understanding how politics plays out for women in real time in an eerily scary way, the same way Veep did, around what it does. And so you've got this film that sharply is cutting into the misogyny. And I haven't even leaned into Matthew Broderick, who is a man who's a teacher who is fearing a woman gaining power because she works too hard and tries too much and allegedly wants to push him to do those things as well. It is both the film of 99 for me and the film that fully resonates up until this day, and the idea of what exists within election has never gone away and actually pushed this to the forefront in a way that I don't know that I can ever escape. Like, I own this film on Criterion. It is, I think, the only 99 film on Criterion that I own. And it just, it's so great. Reese Witherspoon's best role. I know people love her as Elle Woods and whatnot, but this is a nuanced level of depth.
Pick flick.
The cupcakes, the posters, the lesbian sister who's trying to upend and be basically the third party candidate who's pulling from both areas and being the like disastrous political enemy to both.
You're going to pay for my posters.
Yes, it's so good.
She's nadering. I love that for her.
It's and then she ends, I mean, to again, tangent quickly for a second, she ends up in an all-girls school where she plays field hockey and just like obsessively becomes, just obsessed with all these different women. But I think this film just really resonates both with 99 and what was to come, what existed before it and what will come next. And it's just such a genius representation of comedy, great acting, and where we are as a country and where we're going to go.
It's, again, I think it's amazing these two films are up against each other because they're very similar. One of them takes a very like dystopian view of where we're going, and the other one has a slightly more cheerful version. Amma, I saw you having very intense reactions during my pitch for Fight Club, so I'm curious for your vote here.
So I'm a woman in comedy. I have to deal with what Fight Club did to men. I'm not having a good time.
Yeah.
Like, just from the vantage point of like what that movie then like started bubbling up, and now I get to hear a lot of that essentially just like thrown out as jokes, and I'm like, you're not joking. And that's more than a little terrifying. And I think that like both of these movies, like Kevin said, have things that like kind of pulled through to be true. And it's not to say I'm more comfortable with how Election came out, but I feel like that's truer in a way that is, it's true in a way that I suppose is like easier to understand. Like, the truth of how women are treated in elected positions and how it feels when they're seeking power, like that is absolutely true. Is the idea that things are being taken from men true? No.
Yes.
But did that give them license to then be like, give us back what's ours? Yeah. So I would say both of these movies are prescient, but only one of them actively makes my life worse. So I'm picking Election.
I think that's awesome. And let me be very clear when I say that I do not support any part of the pressure.
Oh no. And I didn't read it that I didn't read it that way at all. I just wanted to say like this is my reality. Like I am dealing with the impact of both of these things, but one of them is making it insurmountably worse. So I cannot in good faith pick that movie.
I will also stand by that Helena Bonham Carter is bad in Fight Club. And she didn't have a role that was meant to be something deeper, but she's a great actress and she could have made something out of that. And David Fincher could have pulled something out of her. It's just clear that there wasn't anything to do there.
There's literally no reason for her to be in the movie. Literally none. She does not actually impact the plot in any real way. Kate, where are you?
I feel like it's interesting. Fight Club and The Matrix they are both movies obviously about warped perceptions of reality, right? That have been co-opted by like the worst people who do not see that the movie is actually critiquing the thing that they are taking at face value from the movie, right? Like Fight Club thinks, it's deeply suspicious of performative masculinity and aggression. It knows it's fucking toxic. It's a super anti-capitalist, anti-consumerist, but it looks like, yeah, man, I want to fight, and it's just like, it makes your life worse on a daily basis, Amma, right? Like that is the thing. I don't know. Which is the higher seed, Eric?
The higher seed is actually Fight Club. Fight Club is a 1 seed.
Not surprising.
That's not surprising.
Election is a 4 seed.
Well, I mean, and the thing about Fight Club is like how many, I hate to, well, it's really, you don't talk about Fight Club and it's in a lot of things. And it obviously transcended a lot of culture, but in a way you don't need to be a quote machine to transcend culture, in my opinion.
No.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I think, I think as the most 99, Fight Club smells like 1999 to me. Like it's just like in the way that it's like telling this, it's like forecasting this doom in this dystopic way.
That's fair.
Right? In a way that like Election was, but in a cuddlier way. And Fight Club was like, no, you're going to have to deal with this fucking shit.
Right? The thing I kept thinking while watching it was like, this is the same year as Woodstock 99. And like, to me, like this was like Woodstock 99 as a feature film. Without the music. Well, without the music. Without the live.
There's some music.
I gotta say, the Dust Brothers soundtrack is pretty great.
It's very good. It's very good.
Great. It's pretty great.
I believe we are tied right now, 2 for Fight Club, 2 for Election. I love Election. Please do not in any way think that I do not. It's up against Fight Club. And so I think with the tie, 1 seed Fight Club advances.
Makes sense.
The panel is split between genre-defining office comedy 3 seed Office Space and decade-defining teen Shakespeare interpretation 2 seed 10 Things I Hate About You. Kate, put on your best flair and order up another round for Office Space. Amma, I have absolutely run out of lazy puns for 10 Things I Hate About You for this podcast. So, hit it. I'm going to have Amma go first. Amma can't.
Amma's laughing. She's laughing right now.
I'm okay. So this was an era where, for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, someone in the film space was just like, teens won't read. What if we put hot teens in books?
Yeah.
So we had like William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, I think was like the high point of that. We had that was Othello. And then we had this, 10 Things I Hate About You, Taming of the Shrew, a number of other ones.
Clueless.
Clueless, yeah. Yeah, so even it goes back a little bit further. So going back to Clueless was 95. And I think of the ones we're talking about, I think that 10 Things I Hate About You, I think it interrogated its source material in some interesting ways that maybe the other ones didn't necessarily.
Taming of the Shrew deserves to be interrogated.
It absolutely does deserve to be interrogated. And I think it needed it. And I think that they didn't like shy away from that task. I mean, I think you get Julia Stiles from that, who was fantastic. I'm lukewarm on Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like, I'm never going to be as enthusiastic about him as he is about himself. That's just how I feel.
Drag her. I love it.
Yeah. And again, I think the revelation that's always going to come from this one is Heath Ledger, because nobody knew who he was before. And then he just kind of like shone in this, and then in everything subsequent. Well, not everything subsequently, but a great number of things subsequently just was the best part of so much. And this is where it started for him. And it was just really lovely to kind of watch that come together. And it is really funny. Like, Larry Miller's in it. Allison Janney has a small part, and she's excellent. And it's just one of those things that, like, when I think about that batch of movies, I do like a lot of them. I've spoken many times on the show about how much I love Clueless. Basically, nobody saw but I really enjoyed it. But I think of that batch, this one was probably a marked departure from like how you adapt something while also interrogating what it was originally doing. Yeah, so that's how I feel about it.
Kate, talk to me about Office Space.
So Office Space is, and we talked about this a little bit in the Patreon, in some ways it is a movie of 99, but it kind of like didn't hit until it hit video and it hit cable, right? True. And it began to speak to that generation of, you know, elder millennials, working in offices and just like being stupefied by the banality of it all. So I did not see it in the theater. I do like this movie a great deal. I saw it. I'm sure I saw it on a VHS circa 2002. But it's just such a touchstone. It's such a like kind of throwaway at the end of the decade that then would speak so clearly to all of the things that were already in the world, right? And like everything that sucks about offices and corporate jobs and pieces of flair and everything that's slightly redemptive, but not enough about red staplers, and how like there is a guy who wants to burn it down. There is a guy who wants to burn it down.
I am that man.
You are that man, right? So it's actually, I mean, it's not super 1999. It's ahead of its time in a way that like cult films are. But honestly, I don't know. I might need to change my vote because like, I mean, 10 Things I Hate About You is extremely 99. It's so 99 to me.
It is. Kevin, where are you on this?
So I'll ask this question. What about 10 Things I Hate About You is 99? So I like 10 Things I Hate About You more than I like Office Space as a film.
The hair and the clothes is very 99.
I'll say that. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that.
Dancing on a Table to Biggie is pretty 99.
That's like 90. That's like 96.
97. But still, like,
it takes a minute.
That anchors it in a moment in the way that Office Space does. Well, yeah.
So this is, you know, based on the arguments that you all made in the earlier episode around Office Space, and a person who I'm not going to say what I do for work, but works in a space where I have to engage with people around the performative behavior of their work. I'll say it in that capacity. The idea of office culture or culture at work and what it does is, you all convinced me in the last round around that. And even though I don't genuinely love this movie or Mike Judge, it is there's something prescient about the imprint that he makes in Office Space that was pre tech, pre a lot of what office culture ended up being, that this film
fax machines
that this film
PC load letter.
What the fuck does that mean?
that you're like, what did people do in the, like, what is this world? Like, obviously now that a lot of us work remotely or have all these variable things and it you know, the inherent frustration, although it is funny to hear our parents talk about why we don't go into an office now and complain that we're not in an office. I think they're just jealous ultimately.
Sure.
I think the more 99 movie is Office Space, to be honest. So I think I'm gonna go to Office Space.
I'm with Office Space. Part of it is I've just never understood the allure of 10 Things. I respect everybody else loves it. It's fine. I respect you. I love you, but it's just not for me. Whereas Office Space, I think for everything that Kevin just said, it's prescient in this. Like, would we have The Office without Office Space? And The Office to me defined the 2000s and led to so many other, and we pointed out like, yeah, but that's TV, not film. It's not that that often that we see an office comedy in a film setting. Right. So it's kind of novel, but also sparked its own kind of little cottage industry around that. And then it's also highly memeable before there were memes. In addition to PC load letter, you had the beating the shit out of the copier in the thing.
It feels good to be a gangster.
Exactly. You could, if you could just come in and begin, that'd be great. There's so many things about that movie.
DPS reports.
Like, these are all things that were memed before memes existed, and like, I don't think we can discount how critical it was to pop culture even into the 2000s. Whereas 10 Things I Hate About You, hugely popular, beloved, but definitive of the time period only in the fact that Amma pointed out it represents the let's adapt Shakespeare / other classic works as teen films, but I would argue others did it before and after, and arguably kind of did it better. But that's a debate for someone who actually likes that movie. Kate.
I'm with Office Space, I think, actually. I went back. Yeah.
Are you sticking with 10 Things?
Yeah.
Are you over it, Amma?
It doesn't matter.
I'm sorry, Amma. We do this to her every time. All right, so that means it is Office Space advancing to round 3. And then finally, unanimous decision is 1 seed, The Sixth Sense, Unwrapped, 4 seed, The Mummy. Lastly, in round 2, the panel is currently split between 3 seed, Cruel Intentions, and 2 seed, The Blair Witch Project. Kevin, don't face the wall and tell us why you're so scared that Blair Witch might not advance. Kate, sexually blackmail us all into supporting Cruel Intentions.
Wow.
I'm going to have Kate go first, but it's true.
It's true. So did I see this at a theater my sophomore year? Yes. Did I love it immediately? Yes. Did I buy someone a poster of like Ryan Phillippe I feel like it was a poster of Josh Jackson. Hold on. That was from something else. I'm getting myself confused.
Josh Jackson's hair in that movie is tragic, and it needs to be said.
But he committed, and I love it.
He did.
And then he had to go back to Dawson's Creek with said tips, and I remember that episode.
So this is an adaptation of Dangerous Liaison Dangerous. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that one.
Dangerous Liaisons, which was a movie with John Malkovich and Glenn Close, and baby Uma Thurman. So it's coming off of this Dawson's Creek moment in popular culture, right? It's super representative of this idea that like teens are actually just tiny adults with like thriving sex lives, and they like talk like adults and they make jokes like adults, and some of them are having sex with their teachers, etc. Like, it's a sex comedy thriller. Erotic thriller? This is where erotic thrillers went, Kevin. Like, they went to Cruel Intentions, and you have absolute bangers of the late 90s. Sarah Michelle Gellar playing against good girl, Buffy warrior type, just having a fucking blast in this movie, being, Ryan Phillippe's half-sister who's like sexually blackmailing him. You have Reese Witherspoon and Ryan Phillippe. I did a little research. They did not, in fact, meet on this. They had met previously.
Yeah.
During a 1998 interview with Jane magazine, Magazine. Oh, Jane. Witherspoon said they met at her 21st birthday party. Quote, "I don't know what came over me. Maybe the 7 Midori sours. But I told him, I think you're my birthday present." She told the publication. He thought it was so flattering. And now that I think about it, how embarrassing.
It's how embarrassing.
Is there a more 1998-99 story than that?
Yes.
There is not. So, but also you have Selma Blair, Sean Patrick Thomas, Josh Jackson, Eric Mabius, just like a real murderer's row of TV stars, of the next generation of young TV stars, right? It is supremely 99 in that, like, the final triumphant shot of Reese Witherspoon driving over, I think it's the George Washington Bridge, listening to Bittersweet Symphony. Yeah. Abra Moore's Trip on Love, like, Love Fool is in the movie. The soundtrack has, like, Placebo and Praise You by Fatboy Slim. Like, it's just so 1999. It is, and it's still entertaining. It is still, like, would they make a movie like this? They would make a 10-episode Netflix series, which you could say for like so many things on these film brackets, right? Like it's a high concept that just worked like gangbusters. The reason Sarah Michelle Gellar was cast as a headmistress in Do Revenge was because of this.
Do Revenge
movie,
is Cruel
right?
Intentions.
It's Cruel Intentions. Yeah. So I think, you know, when you look at the sort of like premise of it, it's like, well, what if we did, you know, this like erotic French palace intrigue kind of romance, tragic romance, but like set it among the like wealthy children of Manhattan. And they were like, tell me about Gossip Girl. Like it has a long cultural footprint. It's still a blast. That boy has a mouth like a Hoover.
God bless.
God bless Josh Jackson.
Kevin, talk to us about the Blair Witch Project.
Love Cruel Intentions, but it's a remake, and so it's wholly
You're not
unoriginal.
wrong. You're not wrong.
Wholly unoriginal, and we're talking about one of the most original films of 1999 with the Blair Witch Project. And when I tell you the film, and I'll go back to this, I think I haven't talked about this yet, but there's a book about the best movie year ever, and it's about all the films of 1999. And when I tell you the movie that's peppered throughout almost every quarter of a chapter, every quarter of that book is the Blair Witch Project. It's the Blair Witch Project.
It's the Blair Witch
It's
Project.
the film that really represented what it meant to be an indie film at the time. It is the origination of the style of internet guerrilla marketing to create what and how you market a movie today. It essentially took a fake or a lore that existed within the woods, cast unknowns, essentially the birth of some form of reality television or reality, not reality television.
Found footage.
Found footage horror. So like the Paranormal Activities and things of that nature. But why I say reality television, it basically propagated folks who wanted to be actors or wanted a life in the spotlight to seek out an acting experience or a pseudo scripted acting experience in order to gain fame. So it's not exactly reality television, but it has that like aura or lens on it. I'll name this as well. I did not see Blair Witch until much later. It was not interested in it. I thought it set based on what I had heard or word of mouth. I was like, oh, this is stupid or whatever. And I had friends who were like, no, actually my friends Dan and Katie, you're like, you have to see this movie. We love this. Like it's amazing. And I was like, fine, I will finally watch this. Now, this is like almost like 10 years ago. And I'm like, this movie is bananas and it's amazing. And it is essentially the way they shot it and what they did and how they moved it through. The way this movie found its funding through like back channels of the Sundance Film Festival. And this is when the Sundance Film Festival actually championed what was independent cinema, which it doesn't. It does still, but it's not the same as what it did in the 90s. This in and of itself, for me, is the birthplace of the evolution of horror and what we see today and how it exists in its nuanced and different form. It didn't take, it took a myth and it made something wholly original around it. Something like, I guess, in the way that you would look at 1978 and Michael Myers and reinventing the slasher film. And that's what this is. And you have Heather Donahue running through the forest and I'm so scared, and the snot dripping down her nose, and that recreation of that in Scary Movie with Sherry O'Terry. And talk about meme, this movie would have been like fully the meme machine.
Sure.
And the fact that people thought this was real for a very long time, and I believe this was also one of the top 10 highest grossing films of 1999 on maybe like a $15,000 budget, maybe even less at the time. And I think what makes the Blair Witch just so unique and special for 99 is just the hustle. This was a film that hustled to get made, hustled to be, put into distribution, and then ultimately was that word of mouth sensation. We'll talk about word of mouth and that's what this kind of corner of our bracket is about word of mouth horror sensations in my book. And we have two in this that are pretty great. And they are both, how much was it made for?
The budget for Blair Witch was actually estimated, according to Wikipedia, $200,000 to $750,000. So it's a lot. But the box office was $248.6 million.
That's bananas to me. That's bananas. Like, especially in 1999.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And you're talking about a film where, they tried to replicate it, but they couldn't. Mm-hmm. And I think that ultimately for me is what makes it of its time. You can't replicate it. You can't do this again. You can try and you can make Blair Witch 2 the secret of the witch or the witch coven. But they clearly knew that when that film failed, there's no replicating this. There's no going back to the square one, which means that's why it's of its time and just really great. And that cast, I looked them up when we were, when I was watching this again. I was like, what are they doing? Not much in the Hollywood system, but again, that also is very 99. It's like their one-hit wonder kind of element piece. And so I just love the film, and I think it's actually in my top 10 films of 1999 because it's just that bananas.
I did have a word of mouth joke based on the whole that man has a mouth like a Hoover. So just different kind of word of mouth. Alma, where are you on this one?
I originally had Cruel Intentions. 2 points of Kevin's argument are swaying me in the opposite direction. One being the singular nature of Blair Witch in the sense that they did very quickly find out that it couldn't be replicated, whereas Cruel Intentions has direct-to-video sequels and is the reason we have Gossip Girl, and they tried to redo Gossip. So that concept is replicable. The other piece of it is I didn't forget this, but as you were bringing up the idea of the guerrilla marketing piece of it, that was essentially our generation's War of the Worlds because you couldn't prove it. We didn't have the capacity to prove whether it was true or not until years later. So there were people that went on believing it well into the early 2000s that it was found footage. And that is impossible now.
Yep.
So that is more of its moment than I think anything else we've talked about.
Unless you're QAnon.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take it there, but it is impossible to do that.
Yeah. So between the literal singularness of its nature and just the moment that it came out and what it did, I'm not a horror person, but I also respect the hell out of that as pieces that would make it very 1999. So I am flipping from Cruel Intentions to Blair Witch, even though I love Cruel Intentions dearly. It's a favorite.
I adore Blue Intentions. I adore Cruel Intentions.
Me too.
It was a favorite from when it came out. It remains a favorite. It is a non-guilty pleasure. I have to vote for Blair Witch here. It's the correct decision.
I want to see a matchup between the two of these together. Like the kids from Cruel Intentions go out in the woods. Like,
yes. Oh my God. Yes.
But like, I have to flip it too. Like, it's that replicableness, right? Like it was the right moment, but like Blair Witch, there's never been anything like it before, and there will never be anything like it again.
And plot twist, Kate, the kids from Cruel Intentions going out into the woods. Of course, we know that the real killer, the witch, is Selma Blair. It's right there in the title. It was her all along. So, all right.
Oh my God.
So I know, I'm great. Terrible. So we are advancing Blair Witch Project into round 2. That is it for the end of round 3. That is it for the end of round 2. I cannot believe we're only there in this episode. We're going to take a quick break and break out of de-gayification camp, aka Tennessee, apparently. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey listeners, it's Bob from the Great Pop Culture Debate. We hope you're enjoying this episode and that you're yelling back at your speakers telling us how wrong we are. Did you know that there's a much better way to tell us how you feel? Come kiki with our panelists on Discord. Our patrons at the $10 level get access to our exclusive Discord server where you can share your thoughts about our decisions or just gab with our group about everything pop culture. It's like participating in your own episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Untucked. We have something for everyone to talk about, including reality TV, comics, news, nostalgia, and so much more. So if you love spirited debate and fabulous people, become a Patreon supporter today and join in on the conversation.
And we are back with round 3 of our best film of 1999 debate. Before we get into the Elite 8, I want our panelists to share their social media as well as their upcoming projects. Please make sure to leave your AOL Instant Messenger handle. I'm going to have Amma go first.
All right. So in 1999, I was in 8th grade, which means I was probably listening to a lot of Together and getting ready for Backstreet Boys Millennium and NSYNC's No Strings Attached to come out.
Wow.
This was an exciting time to be alive.
It really was. I was having a great time. I still talk about those things and many other things in my comedy, and I just had a half hour come out. It is on YouTube. Kevin was there. He is credited as a seating technician because he helped move some chairs. But yeah, you can find that on YouTube or at amamarfo.com/comedy.
It's called what?
The special?
Yep.
Enjoy Your Nachos.
Enjoy Your Nachos. Perfect. Kate, what were you doing in 99? What are your social handles? What are your projects?
In 1999, I was finishing the back half of my freshman year and starting the first half of my sophomore year as a 19-year-old student at the University of Buffalo. That summer, I worked at the PNC, which stands for Producers and Consumers. It's a grocery store in upstate New York. And oh God, I was 19 and there was a movie theater around the corner where the movies were $5. I saw like every movie on this bracket almost. But my social handles are on Instagram if you want to see pictures of my cats. It is at Gomez Rack. Occasionally I'm on Twitter at Kate Rakulia. That's about what I got.
Any other projects you're working on?
Nothing in particular right now. This.
All right. Thank you. Kevin, what were you doing in 99 and your socials and your projects?
Yep. In 99, I was, even though I'm 2 years older than Amma, I was a freshman in high school because my parents kept me back in preschool because my preschool teacher told me I was immature. Hilarious. And I was at an all-boys military high school. Ooh, fantasies about.
I was going to say that we need to hear more about that, but that's another episode.
Well, that happened sophomore year. So, and then, socials. You can find me on Twitter if you follow me. Sorry if I like a lot of porn. So at E.T. Kevin's Mind. So you might see some of it. So good. Congratulations if you like penis.
There you go. So I, in 1999, was wrapping up my degree at Syracuse University. I was working at the Byrd Library on the Syracuse University campus on the weekends. And then I got my first real big boy job at the Syracuse New Times, which I think is now defunct. And in the summer of 99, I was an intern at Marvel Comics. So I lived in New York City for the summer and had a wild time, including some stories about some of these movies in the Elite Eight, which we'll be getting to shortly. Hey. You can find me at Eric Resniak. That's ERICREZ as in zebra, S as in snake, N as in Nancy, YAK on Twitter or Instagram, or just message at Great Pop Culture Debate on Instagram or at GPCD on Mastodon. With that out of the way, let's move on to the round 3 before Tyler Durden comes to harvest my fat for explosives.
Oh my God.
Although honestly, right now I would welcome it. But given how long this episode is running, we are going to go around the horn with these Elite 8 picks. First up, it's The Matrix versus Eyes Wide Shut. Amma, I want your vote on this. Where are you voting?
I wish you could all see Amma's face. It's incredible.
Oh boy. From the jump. The Matrix. Ugh.
The good news is one of the two of them will be knocked out. Kate, where are you?
I'm with The Matrix, and I can make an argument when it's time to make an argument.
Tom Ripley, aka Kevin, where are you?
I'm with Eyes Wide Shut, and I know it's okay. I'm sad that it's going, but Eyes Wide Shut.
It's time. The Matrix is advancing here.
Whoa.
We are, and I can see Amma's pain, and I'm sorry to continue to inflict this upon you, but it's where we are. Next, it's Galaxy Quest versus Being John Malkovich. I'm going to start with Kevin. Where are you?
Easily Being John Malkovich.
Kate, where are you?
This is tough. I mean, Galaxy Quest is the sentimental favorite, but for 99ness, I think I have to go with Malkovich.
Amma Marfo.
I agree. I think that Galaxy Quest is more 99. No. I take it back. Sorry. Being John Malkovich is more 99.
Yeah, I'd like a nice tall cup of milk, and I'm going to be giving it to John Malkovich here.
Wow. We're really doing our best work now.
We really are. It's not at all super late, and that's what's, yeah, right?
Nope.
It's a full sweep for Mr. Malkovich. Next, it's Fight Club versus Office Space, another matchup that Amma could not be more delighted about.
Sorry, Amma. I hate it here so much.
Could not be more delighted. Again, the tinfoil lining. One of the two of them's out now, so Kate, where are you voting?
I have to vote for Fight Club.
Kevin, where are you?
I also had to vote for Fight Club.
Amma, do you care?
I care a great deal. That's why I can't vote. Office Space, but I know when I'm beat.
I know. I am voting for Fight Club here. I think Office Space had a good run, but it's Fight Club. And then finally in the Elite 8, it's The Sixth Sense versus The Blair Witch Project. I love this matchup, actually.
This is a good matchup.
These are the films of the summer of 1999. These are the two tentpoles right here. This and Star Wars Episode 1 were the definitive summer films.
Summer films.
I'm going to start with Kevin here.
I'm going to go with The Sixth. Skip me. No,
Skip
wait.
you.
Eric, can you go first?
Me go first?
I feel like you have a definitive answer.
So, I think in terms of the film of the year, it's going to go to Sixth Sense. I think
that's my leaning too.
It is both horror. It has the word of mouth part of it. It was the Twist movie. Like, mind you, like, the Twist movie was a big thing in 1999. And I think it is the better made movie of them all.
It's a beautifully made movie.
It's a beautifully made movie.
That's this. So I'm going to go with The Sixth Sense. And what puts it over the edge for me. And this is almost, I don't even know how many years ago this was. The Toni Collette scene in the car with Haley Joel Osment.
Oh my God.
In the car
where he tells her that her mother's proud of her. I literally sobbed for about 5 minutes straight. And so for that alone, I'm going with The Sixth Sense.
Amma, where are you on this one?
I think this is a case of something being singular versus something being really long lasting. And it's unfortunate that those two things are up against each other.
Yep.
So I would say for what The Sixth Sense did in 1999 and what it enabled for M. Night Shyamalan and so many other people, I got to give it to them. Blair Witch made it very far, but The Sixth Sense edges out here.
Yeah.
Kate, where are you on this one?
I am going to give it to Sixth Sense. I think all of the arguments and everything we said about Blair Witch, absolutely, right? But Sixth Sense is a better made movie. Sixth Sense, like, was the beginning of his career. It is very singular, right? It came out of nowhere. Like, I literally remember sitting in the movie theater in North Syracuse next to you, Bob, and like drink, and literally being like, "Holy fuck, he's dead!" Like, figuring it out, you know? And like that is a great movie going experience. Now, I did go see the Blair Witch in a movie theater, also with Bob and my friend Jenna, and like it was a memorable experience, but it wasn't a scary one. Like, because there were so many people and it was so raucous and it was so clearly a movie, right? Like, in the way that, like, if I had seen it on a VHS in my house, it would have been way scarier. So, Sixth Sense.
And fun fact, M. Night Shyamalan got to have his credit or got to keep his edit of Sixth Sense because they had him do some rewrites on 10 Things I Hate About You.
She's all that.
Or she's all that. She's all that. Thank you.
I was like, what?
She's all that. I was like, it's another teen
is that why the hacky
movie.
sack scene is so creepy? It probably is.
So before we move Sixth Sense on, I do want to say something about Blair Witch, and we do need to acknowledge, for all the reasons that Sixth Sense is singular and long-lasting, Blair Witch did launch an entire genre of horror, right? And there are innumerable, and not just horror, like really, Cloverfield is an inspiration. That's not horror, that's sci-fi. But I need to tell my Blair Witch story from New York. So, interning at New York, Blair Witch is just starting to come out. It's not even a thing yet. It's just like, hey, one of the other interns is like, I heard this movie, Blair Witch, it's opening downtown in the Village. Do you guys want to go tonight? We know nothing about it. And it was just like, whatever. We just say yes, am I right? Mm-hmm. So a bunch of us go down. We are unfortunately stuck in the front row of the theater because it's completely packed. This theater happens to be on top of a subway line. So that's important to the story. So I'm there with my fellow intern, Jen, and we're watching the movie. We know nothing about it going in, literally nothing. And it's unfolding. And as someone pointed out earlier, she literally thinks this is real. She thinks it's a documentary. So she's becoming increasingly upset as it goes along. There's the scene where they open up something in a tissue and you can't really see what it is. Yeah. She's literally, Annie, not Jen. She's literally out of her seat on the floor, freaking out because she's like, oh my God. Like, she really thought someone had died. And then the train goes underneath the movie theater and everything starts to vibrate. She's losing her mind. Like, it was incredible. It was an experience. Then we get to the end of the movie, which is a great ending. It is a perfect ending for that ending. It really lingers with you. And she is screaming next to me, just screaming in horror at what just happened. I was like, holy shit. I can't tell you what happened for the rest of that night, but what a fucking experience that was. So it does have an impact. It really was successful.
We do come to this place for magic.
We do come to this. Thank you, Nicole Kidman. My eyes are wide open. Yes, work. But that being said, it is the Sixth Sense that needs to continue into the final four. With that, we are going to take a quick break, even though we just came back, and we're going to attend a creepy orgy on Long Island. We'll be right back after these messages. And we are back with the final four of our best film of 1999 debate. At this point in the show, I like to take a step back and see if the F4 lines up with where I thought it would be going or if it makes sense at all. We have The Matrix versus Being John Malkovich, Fight Club versus Sixth Sense. I think these are four Titanic films from this year. Is it exactly where I thought it was going to go? Not even close. But I think this is a terrific final four for this. I know Amma wants at least two of these out, and unfortunately I can't promise you that. But let's get going. First up, it's The Matrix versus Being John Malkovich. Amma, where are you on this?
Being John Malkovich.
Is it because of your hatred of The Matrix and not because you think Being John Malkovich is a better film?
No, it's because of my love for Being John Malkovich.
Okay, great. Just checking. Kate, where are you on this one?
I am with The Matrix, and I can make my argument if now is the time.
Kevin, where are you?
I am with Being John Malkovich as
well. This is getting spicy.
Yes.
I am with The Matrix with the asterisk that I actually don't love The Matrix as a film. But
only Matrix lover on this podcast?
I respect it as an important cultural moment and in a film that has tremendous impact in multiple ways. But as a film and as a story, as someone who read comic books for decades before this
Yeah.
movie came out, I've been like, been there, done that, girl. Like nothing you are giving me is like taking me there.
Correct.
But I respect it as an impact. Kate, I do think now is the time for an argument.
Now is the time for the argument. So did I see this in the theater in April or whenever it came out in 1999? Yes, I did. Did I love it? Yes, I did. Was my screensaver background for the better part of the next 2 years Matrix Code? Yes, it was. Has the podcast, have I talked about my feelings about Keanu Reeves on this podcast before?
I think you've touched upon them, but now is a good time.
They are very deep. They're extremely strong. I have loved him since Ted, but then Speed. Speed was a sexual awakening and just like such a, when he runs out into traffic, he's so beautiful. And he's also just like such a mensch. Like as a human, he just seems like such a good dude.
Yeah.
Who's not perfect, but has something kind of right inside himself where he's like, I know who I am and I know what I can do and I'm just gonna do my job and like not be a dick. And like maybe that's a low bar, but my God, I love him for it. Like, so I love Keanu. And I just think he's a really interesting movie star, right? Because he almost has like ego death. Like he can step into anything and be precisely what he needs to be in this movie, which is a smoking hot Christ figure. Like, so I mean, the Christ figure part is less smoking hot to me, but it has a long, complicated cultural trail like Fight Club. This movie has the unfortunate, like it is about warped reality and reality not being what you think it is and appealing to like just the worst people who want to take all the wrong messages from it, right? Like I forget which is the good pill, the red pill or the blue pill, right?
I don't know anymore.
I don't remember anymore. But like the point of the movie is not to think the world is against you and only you know what's right, cis white hetero man. Like that's not the point of The Matrix. The point of The Matrix, made by true trans women who like are very prominent filmmakers now, right? Like it is about breaking the binary and like seeing what's beyond what you think is your prescribed life. But like Fight Club, it is, I mean, there's like in Being John Malkovich and Sixth Sense, all four of these movies are about altered perception and sensory perception and reality not being what you expect it to be, which is such a 1999 mood. It is extremely 1999 in that it feels very end of rave culture. It feels very beginning of internet culture. Even though it is representative and made up of kinds of genre storytelling that have been going on since Philip K. Dick and William S. Gibson and Neuromancer and comic books. But this was the movie that brought the internet and cyberpunk, which they had been trying to do literally with Keanu several times throughout the whole of the 90s. And they got it. They fucking killed it. Like the first movie, the rest of them, diminishing returns. The first movie is self-contained, beautiful filmmaking, incredible effects, has a great sense of fun when he's like kung fuing, like, come at me, Mr. Smith, right? And Hugo Weaving, incredible in this movie. Carrie-Anne Moss, incredible in this movie. Lawrence Fishburne, incredible in this movie. Joey Pants, incredible in this movie. Like, it is a way that we talk and think about our reality in a way that is divorced and actually toxically twisted from the way it was meant. What is a more 1999 mood than that?
Yeah. And like that's, you're completely right that it has been co-opted by the exact people that it's criticizing.
Yes.
But like for some odd reason, like I never look at it from that because I understand the creators and the point of it.
Right. The point of view of it. Yeah.
Very clear textually in the film. Like, no, it's about broadening your expectations and not just accepting what is given to you as reality and making your own reality. It's actually very, for 99 movie especially, it's actually kind of uplifting, right? So for all of those reasons, even though I don't particularly love it as a film, I do agree with everything you just said. I'm sticking with The Matrix. Amma and Kevin, are you sticking with Malkovich?
Yes.
Yes.
You are.
I respect it.
I respect it too. These are two great films. We are tied. Matrix is a 1 seed. I believe Malkovich is a 2, correct? Can I get a ruling on seeds for this one? I'm sorry. It's a 2 seed. So don't hate me. Malkovich will have to go out at this point. I'm sorry, Amma.
Malkovich.
I admire it. I just don't think it's even close. I actually think their best film is Bound, and so please listen to our queer film history
Yes.
film, because I think that's a much better movie of theirs than The Matrix.
I love a lot of their movies that a lot of people don't like, including Speed Racer and Cloud Atlas.
Speed Racer is excellent.
No. Yeah, but I love the ambition of them. That's what I love. Next up, it is Fight Club versus The Sixth Sense. I'm going to start with Kevin. Where are you?
I'm going to go with... Okay, so I watched both of these recently, and I think before I had rewatched them, I will say that I had Fight Club ranked higher. But when I rewatched both of them, Fight Club dragged for me in the middle a little bit, in a way that I was like, oh, this could have been cut down by like 20 or 30 minutes and it would have been a perfect film.
Sure.
And The Sixth Sense is a tight 1 hour and like 45-minute film that like gets to the core sole purpose of what it means to explore death, and in a very interesting and dynamic way. And I am not the biggest M. Night Shyamalan fan. You can ask many people. In fact, genuinely don't want to watch most of his films. But for this, I'm going to go with The Sixth Sense.
Kate.
I am also going to go with The Sixth Sense. I think it is a tighter, better, really good. It's a really good movie.
It's a good movie.
It's really good. Yep.
Yeah.
Like an excellent piece of filmmaking. And not that like David Fincher's not, but David Fincher's best is Zodiac, and I'll die on that hill forever.
Agree with you 100,000,000%, Kate.
Yep.
Amma.
So these are both really big twist movies, and I think that's a really big, interesting piece of the 1999-ness of it, in the sense that if you were to make either of those now, that secret doesn't hold in a way that it did for many of the other movies that we've since had. We're like, hey, don't tell anybody, and then someone's like, cool, shoots their mouth off and will ruin it immediately. With that said, I am choosing The Sixth Sense here for a number of reasons, but I think the biggest one is, again, like the long tail of that versus the long tail of Fight Club. And one of those long tails is generally good, innocuous at best, and the other long tail is so bad.
I agree completely with everything you just said. So we're going to make it a clean sweep for Sixth Sense, giving us a final two of The Matrix versus The Sixth Sense. I think this is a good final two.
It is. These are the two most genuinely memorable and surprising experiences I had in a theater in 1999.
Yeah, I agree. I want to start smack in the middle with Kate. Who wins?
Oh, God damn it. I have to give it to The Matrix, but if The Sixth Sense takes it, I won't hate it.
Okay. I'm going to go to Amma. Where are you on this?
I'm giving it to The Sixth Sense.
I knew, but I had to.
Thank you for confirming.
Yes. Kevin.
This is tough. Because you can look at these two films. I think I actually said to Eric, I don't want The Matrix to win this because it is the most. No, and the only reason I said that was because it's like it's
the obvious winner.
It's the obvious winner. It is.
Yep.
It is.
It didn't even get discussed until we got here. Right. Yeah.
It's that film. It's the pepperoni, I guess, if you will, for this episode. I love that always comes up in the different episodes we do. It makes me laugh every time I listen. This is really tough.
Do you want me to chime in here?
Yeah, chime in, because I genuinely, what I'll say is like The Matrix is so interesting because it is in a way the birth of how we understand the internet and like engaging in that space. And that what's more 99 than being a freshman in high school and being on AOL and engaging in the internet for the first time. I still didn't understand it in that space and how it connected. And like there's something so fascinating about the culture around it that and I agree with Amma that I don't actively love, but it's so much the conceit of the time. And it was the little engine that could of 99. Both of these are in many ways, but I want you to chime in too, Eric, because I'm still fully split on this.
I'm not sure that The Matrix is the obvious winner here. I think honest to God, you could make a strong case for 3 out of 4 of the final 4 being ones that people would be like, oh, they'd look at a list of movies from 99 and be like, oh, it's going to be that one. I think people would say Sixth Sense easily. I think people would say Fight Club easily.
Okay.
I think people would say The Matrix easily as well. I don't think it is the pepperoni. I find myself, so we talked about our different rubrics, and which one of these films would I rather watch again and revisit? Easily The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Easily The Sixth Sense. It is, it has that, the moodiness of 99. I mean, the Matrix has a mood as well, but it's a little bit more boisterous and bravado, and this was more calm and
it's a lot more
introspective.
Violent. Like the Matrix is extremely violent. Like the guns in the Matrix are hard to watch now. Like
that's a great point.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. I feel like what is the better film? I think it's The Sixth Sense. It's artistically crafted. It has wonderful performances in it. And if we've been arguing about how 99 films are largely defined by a twist, what's more twisty than the expected one not winning and it going to the less expected option?
I see what you're saying there. I will rejoinder to your, it is a beautifully crafted and made film, but like the Wachowskis redefined special effects utterly. They literally changed the way we experience film reality in that movie. But at this point, like it's like going back to watch Citizen Kane, you're like, whatever. But like when that came out, it was like,
at the time you were like, whoa.
You were literally, whoa. Like,
there it is.
I get it. I don't disagree with that at all. If I'm going with my gut here, I go with The Sixth Sense. So right now, I think I have Amma on Sixth Sense.
You do?
I have Kate on Matrix.
I gotta go with Keanu, which again, we have the John Wicks. Like, we also have those other wonderful gifts he's given us and the speeds.
So it comes down to you, Kevin.
Oh boy. I think the thing that I'll ultimately lean into is like thinking about, where you end up and like what pulls you in. And so you said a couple of different things. And so I'm going to talk about this in two different aspects. Like The Matrix is a genre defining film that really made an impact in a way. And it's like so precisely crafted, like from the costume design to the visual effects and the hard work that went into it. And I think ultimately what I'm going to go down to is like, what am I going to when I rewatched The Sixth Sense, I was genuinely terrified watching it. I was like, when the girl slides the box.
When Misha Barton shows up in that tent, man.
Yeah, girl.
I freaked the fuck out and I was like, Jesus Christ. And talk about spoilers. Listen, anyways, but side story. If anyone spoils Scream 6 for me, I will come to your house and I will hurt you. But I think I'm going to go with The Sixth Sense because I genuinely will rewatch that film again. And I just have been on a like anti M. Night kick a little bit, but I just don't love what he created after that. After The Village, I guess I should say. After The Village. I'm not a huge fan of him. But I love what he created here. Like, I love that he gave both of these filmmakers, the Wachowskis, so these sisters and M. Night Shyamalan are at the forefront of creating wholly original, very interesting stories in different genres. And I think we have to celebrate that.
Yep.
But what I will say is like, I am always a sucker for an original, well-told horror film that has heart and depth of story. And that's what The Sixth Sense is. And we need more of that. And that's why I'm going to go with The Sixth Sense of these two. Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. Our pick for the best film of the 1999 is The Sixth Sense. Do you agree? Do you think that we got hit in the head during a freak frog storm? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Mastodon. While you're there, make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. If you really enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to like and rate the episode of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you use. I want to say thank you to my panel. I will always dodge bullets in slow motion with you. And thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get even more exclusive content and you get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one. And remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. I will sell this house today.